And so you've also got that to contend with, not just, delivering the character that Tolkien wrote, but also delivering something that is different to what everyone else has done.
So there was a real challenge for us because Smaug couldn't look like all those other dragons. He is the archetype from which all modern fantasy dragons are drawn. But how do you then show the archetype without looking like you're just copying everything that's been done in the years before?
We thought about different designs, and you could do something very imaginative and unexpected.
He could go either this way of going something totally fresh and new and something that nobody's ever seen before.
Or give the audience something that they will instantly recognise as a dragon, but hopefully done better than we've ever seen before.
This is interesting. Maybe if it's just if it hasn't got quite this big chin. But anyway, you guys can do doodling away. I mean, I suspect it's going to be a bit of a long design process.
From the very beginning of working on The Hobbit, you've always got the thought in the back of your mind, what is Smaug going to look like? It wasn't really helped by the fact that every time I'd run into people, it was like, wow, I can't wait to see Smaug. I can't wait to see Smaug. I mean, we were very much aware of this pressure on us, and the pressure was there a long time before we had a clue what he was going to look like.
But one of the things that he was very firm on was the scale that Smaug was going to be.
Peter said, I thought about it quite a lot, and I wondered what can be done to make him original. And I think he has to be big.
Because I just thought, well, if I was Bilbo, if I was a little hobbit going into this place, what would actually be truly terrifying? And I just thought, well, let's say he's massive. Let's say he's way, way huger than what you would ever imagine. No reason why he can't be. Erebor's a big place. I mean, Erebor's got plenty of room for him.
And we were saying, but how big? And he's like, huge. It's going to be massive, this thing. But how big is massive? Well, we finally got it out of him.
Let's start with his head the size of a bus. So there's his eye, his nostril. That's what we're going to see, and let's just figure it out. And I can't think people, what?
Everyone was just like, what?
That is insanely large.
Biggest thing in Middle-earth, who knows what he eats when he's not living in the cave.
So we dutifully noted huge. Then several months later, Peter said, I've been thinking about Smaug, and, he's very old.
This is an ancient creature that has lived in these catacombs for a very long time.
And so he's a very septic, very toxic, rotten, corrupted beast.
So we dutifully noted once again, very old.
We all came around to very quickly realise that this dragon had to be a spectacle.
We were all desperately wanting to have a go at designing Smaug.
Peter was interested in seeing a huge plethora of different ideas.
Peter uses the workshop team as a sort of a think tank of ideas.
We have a lot of incredible artists, a lot of credible conceptual designers at Weta Workshop, especially, that worked on Smaug, and you want to give them a certain degree of freedom. Good to just get parameters of avoid this, avoid that, and then just basically let them go for it.
We went off on some wild and crazy journey. Different wing configurations, different leg structures, head forms.
We explored some radically unusual concepts in an effort to try and find a unique trait or a unique physical characteristic for Smaug.
So I was thinking of a very kind of pointed and like rocky head formation on the top of his head, so he could almost burrow through the tunnels under the mountain. And you can see bits of broken off bony structure because he has to kind of plow through cave systems to get out.
So these are a couple of my initial stabs at Smaug the dragon. I was trying something a bit more brutish and quite heavy set in the jaw, and he's been living in the Lonely Mountains for, hundreds of years, and his skin started to peel away and his lips have started to erode.
I was thinking that some of his teeth have come out, and when he sleeps, the chemicals that make up his ability to breathe fire trickle out of his mouth like drool and actually combust, so you end up with a flow of liquid fire pooling around him as he sleeps.
I offered up a bunch of concepts early on of these sort of more dinosaurish looking dragons, some with feathers and triceratops-like crests and horns.
I was very much interested in the little pen and ink drawing that Tolkien did on his map. A design aesthetic that was a little bit more sleeker, a little longer, more serpent-like dragon.
Here was an idea that's kind of completely out there, which eyes on the side of his head like a hammerhead shark. Peter was thankful we went there, but I think he wants it a bit more classical looking. But yeah, I think that was a bit too out there for what he wanted.
Obviously, there's a million different ways you could go with Smaug. But in my mind, what you're going to end up with in that case is an alien creature, a monster. You may as well be on a Star Wars film or something. You know, to me, that wasn't the point with Smaug. Smaug is a dragon.
So Peter asked that we start with something very, very simple and just think about the basic form of the dragon.
Stripping back the dragon iconography to the bare minimum. And he referenced Komodo dragons as a very good example.
I wanted Smaug to feel old. And then I remembered documentaries and things I'd seen on TV with Komodo dragons where you get this kind of decrepit, wrinkly scale, skin disease. You sort of feel their ancient age.
There's some real personality in the bruteness of them, and they really have a nastiness to their face.
There's nothing comical about a Komodo dragon. I have a much greater fear of being bitten and held onto by a Komodo dragon and being poisoned by its rotting mouth than maybe being shredded by a tiger. For instance, I'm sure we all think about these things. I certainly do.
So slowly what tended to happen was the designs became more powerful. You know, he widened out a bit more.
An incredibly blocky, solid, powerfully built creature.
Stocky legs, a thick, heavy tail.
Certainly the way Komodo dragons move is a little unusual.
They're very lizard-like appendages that come out from the shoulder and hip sockets, that they actually walk in this rolling, quite unique way.
Where that changed in our design process was, I think, when Peter started to think about, well, we will see him when he first attacks the mountain, and for that, I want a more agile, youthful dragon.
So we ultimately did abandon the Komodo dragon idea.
Smaug's supposed to represent the archetypical dragon. So at this stage, we still don't know where his design's at. He's still a long way off.
And that is, you know, it was weighing on our mind. And honestly, it's that slight nagging thing. You wake up at 2 in the morning and you just think, what are we going to do with Smaug? What are we going to do with him? It's always that nagging fear in the back of your mind.
Sometimes you get stuck on one thing and you think, that's all right, I'll just leave it at that. But you never know what you're capable of until you push you that extra step further. We've still got a long way to go, so going to keep trying new ideas and keep pushing around.
There's some exceptional concept work. Just, it could have been a number of things, but, you know, we kept looking and kept looking and kept looking. And finally, we started to make some progress.
Jamie came up with what I thought was just a beautiful bit of creature design.
He did this incredible maquette in, as Jamie does, in frighteningly short length of time. It definitely would have been in under a day. And it was just of the neck and the head in this wonderful serpentine shape.
I did something that was kind of a weird mixture between a crocodile and a snake, with the sort of neck sack that you would have on some reptiles, but trying to keep it sly and cunning.
There's an intelligence in that head in the way that you don't see when you look at a snake or a crocodile. It wasn't just a creature, it was a character all of a sudden.
I tried to add all the subtleties that would allow it to drive facial expression, so it needed to have more character.
The main thing Peter reacted to was the head and the angle of the jaw, which is something that very heavily influenced the final head shape.
Then I did a couple of body studies that had interesting areas of activity across its body.
I mean, maybe all these things could just, you know, they could sort of fold up as he's kind of express emotion. They kind of, you know, they sort of straighten up in almost in a threatening way.
I thought I'd be great if it could heckle up or flare, because it gives you far more capacity to invoke mood.
But he's definitely got an attitude, it's great.
Yeah, he looks sly.
So what we saw coming back in was a crest of horns and scales that projected a long way off his body.
It all informed Peter in his thoughts, I guess, of, wow, this is looking cool and this is something we should run with.
Andrew Baker then took up the challenge to bring that into ZBrush, and then with his own design ideas as well, push it forward to the next step.
You slowly whittle it down from the big picture to smaller and smaller details. It's a bit like you're shopping and, you know, going around the shops and picking things off the shelf to, oh yes, I'll have one of those and one of those. Like that one's actually not too dissimilar to the one that we've ended up with.
Just making it feel a little bit more like a character rather than a creature as well.
Right.
There's a great deal of enjoyment in the process of broadly exploring a concept. But at some point, of course, the work has to be funneled down to the single defining idea. And that is driven by deadlines, the fact that Weta Digital still needs the time to actually turn it into a living, breathing creature that's going to exist in the movie. And in some cases, the design process doesn't quite find it by the time it gets to that deadline.
In August 2012, I think it was, Pete turns over the prologue sequence to us for film 1, and in that, he gave us a bunch of dragon shots. Some of those were fleeting glimpses, but then there were a couple of shots that included some high-level detail, such as the final shot in film 1 where his eye is revealed.
It was one of the last pieces of work that we had turned over to us. So that gave us 9 weeks to finish the whole thing.
We didn't even really have a lockdown design for him when we started pre-vising that sequence, and this is like 2 months before the film's released. They were still working on the design.
Any questions on this sequence? This little tiny sequence we have 8 weeks to do?
Do we have a design?
Workshop is working on it.
Right.
It seems like they're narrowing in on something, at least something that is going to be enough for the first movie.
The notes we got from Peter about that were it was just about glimpses, knowing that it's a dragon, but just never really see him very clearly.
I didn't want to give away exactly what he looked like, so we kept him pretty fleeting, shadows and silhouettes. But the eye for Smaug, which we see at the end of the first Hobbit movie, I mean, we didn't have a dragon. I mean, we did not have Smaug. I mean, that was literally us realizing that we had to get Smaug on screen, and we hadn't got a design that I was completely happy with. And, you know, we didn't need to see the dragon. I mean, it wasn't a problem in that regard, but we did need to see an eye, so...
So it's quite an important shot. It's actually the closing shot of the film, so it has to simultaneously convey a lot of malice and malevolence, huge intelligence, a lot of vanity.
In all that, it had to have that kind of personality. You know, you had to be able to look into his eyes and really be able to see his soul.
So how you actually get all of that into a computer-generated eye is the task.
And it was at that point John Howe became heavily involved in Smaug and started offering amazing ideas.
See, I think that's too regular. I think we need something in that frame that will actually show that it's a dragon and not a huge big alligator.
Yeah.
To be involved with Smaug was something I very much looked forward to. Whenever I had a spare moment from working on post-production, I'd draw another Smaug. I was continually getting in trouble for doing Smaugs, and I was supposed to be working on this and that and this and that. But such a thing like Smaug, you can't just let it be happening next door without trying to help.
So
John is not only fantastic as an overall conceptual designer of creatures and worlds, but he also has an incredible fascination with the detail of things.
I did a drawing of Smaug's eye. Peter mentioned that he wanted his eye to feel very old, so the lid would be drooping and a very kind of crusty side to it with the wrinkles and the pouches and the scales and all of that. And we'd been thinking a lot about what shape his pupil should have. And I did this little pencil scribble in the corner of a drawing.
Which almost looked more like a keyhole kind of thing with a couple of like diamonds on the tips of the pupil. It was quite interesting. We can see that we're starting to introduce some of John's artwork that he's done, which is really beautiful stuff. And, you know, John was really focusing on trying to come up with something so that when we see it, you're going to know it's a dragon. You know, you don't want to say, oh, is that a crocodile? Is that an alligator? No, it's definitely a dragon. Hey, Kevin. Hey, I just shot something that you guys can review for the new eyes, like we talked about this morning. You know what Joe requested.
We're going to show that animation today, so we can mention it in 2 evenings.
Okay, cool.
Does this have John's pupil?
Yeah.
Well, we can show it and just see what he says.
Okay.
It's a talking point. We need to do that at this point, so.
Exactly. All right, thanks.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
I'm not wearing any pants.
Hey. You're on they're videoing us right now too. So
You're on the DVD, Eric. Congratulations.
I'll talk to you later.
See ya. Thanks.
Get the pants on. I'll call you back.
Good luck. It's a VFX supervisor there.
The dragon shot in the first film was the very last shot we finished.
Cool. It's very exciting to see Smaug come to life finally after all these years. It's time for that dragon to wake up.
There's always is a last shot.
Fantastic.
And it is the last shot.
It is.
So we can't count them until you approve the
Oh, I see. So
they're not director approved yet, so we can't count them yet.
Right.
So something like this, which you're just going to say final to.
I don't think I have any choice but to say final. I think your odds are pretty good. I think your odds are actually quite good.
You always have a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks good. Okay.
Awesome.
All right. You sound like you want to get the film finished.
Lemonade fruit.
All right, so I'm gonna go get John Howe. He's supposed to be here now. Just wanted to get everybody together as just like as a final thank you for everybody busting their butt on Smaug. Trying to wrangle these artists is like impossible. John?
Sorry about that.
We're in a meeting.
No, we're in the middle of, we got two meetings slapped in right at the same time.
I'm thinking that we would be
So come on and have a drink with us and celebrate Smaug. Hey guys, this is just a big congratulations to everybody involved in the building of Smaug, especially John. Thank you so much for all your inspiration and all your work that you did on them. Woo! Yeah, it was literally done in a month. The trickiest part was the eyeball. You know, I think everybody knew that we just had to nail that eye. It had because it was the last shot of the film.
The most difficult thing was to get John to stop drawing.
You plead not guilty? Make it sound like it's all done, but no, it's just started.
This is more of a birth.
Yeah, the birth.
When we finally finished Smaug for film 1, we got him to a certain point, but we knew that there was a huge storm coming.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers to Smaug.